Sanjay ji, namaskar.
Namaskar, namaskar.
How are you doing? All well?
Good, good, good.
Achha, I would request
Good.
Vijay ji and two people have put their phones on unmute. So I would request both of them to put their phones on mute. So obviously, like when more people would be joining, so it'll be difficult. I mean, so like unintentionally, like some people, they don't look at this thing. I mean, so like I would request.
I will mute.
There are two people who have put their phones on unmute. So I would request both of them to put it on mute.
I will mute all once we start. So
that's fine.
Yes.
Sorisha, ठीक है ना?
Very first class. So you are going to office or no?
It's work from home only. No, I should have. It's work from home only.
Okay.
So obviously things are deteriorating, but gradually, I mean, so like it's happening like 10%, then 20%, then 30%. So that is how the strategy is going to be in the banks. So so that is the way forward. Obviously, like I mean, like June, July, it's a halti to dilemmas chuta pai ki kya chalana. Things are further.
People will either catch this disease or they will deal with it.
Each one, we have to live with it. Economy, then talking about like these guys, they have a meeting tomorrow morning at 11. Amit Shah and Delhi guys. So, but economy, I mean, you can't stop it now. When you have already started it, there's no way then that you can look back and sort of tell the people, even though business communities, they're talking about like to stop the business, to stop, close the markets, but government will not do that.
They only need to create capacity of healthcare. That's it. They only need to do that.
मला छोटा वक्तशी खरेदी गमच.
Why don't they join? Or
we have to put password.
Ranju sab namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, namaskar.
We can do it on our own.
I think we'll start in a minute. Kapil hasn't joined yet, though I spoke to him a few hours ago. I think his phone is also not reachable. Maybe some network issue or whatever. So we will start. Maybe he'll join later. My role, Shumara Yuti, that I will introduce the panelists as well as those who are from our team going to conduct. And then Vinod will take over. Actually, Vinod Kaul is Vice President of Jammu Kashmir Vicharmanch. He is raising his hand. He will be the host of this Gennext talk series. Vinod is Vice President of Jammu Kashmir Vicharmanch. He is a very senior professional. He works with a multinational Israeli company into telecom called Gilat. He is South Asia head. And I have other members also from my team. Kuldeep ji is our vice treasurer, and he is an architect. and he's also General Secretary of our Indrapuram Association. He will be introducing the topic. And then I also have Renu Kak. She is our secretary. She is a professional, she's a trainer, and she'll be doing vote of thanks. Mattoo is also here. He is our president, and Satish Bhatt, he is our general secretary. I hope they are here. So it's a great honor to have an eminent speaker like Dr. Nirmal Mattoo with us this evening. I am grateful to him for joining us. Just a second, I will mute all first. Unmute Vinod and Vinod. Yeah, I think I have put the systems in place. Vinod, I have included you as a co-host. Nirmalji, I have unmuted you. You can unmute yourself at your will, whatever you want, because you will be speaking. So Nirmalji is a leading nephrologist, was born in Srinagar in Kashmir, and most of the studies happened in Delhi. He did his medicine from Delhi and then moved to US, and he's one of the leading nephrologists in US, one of the largest dialysis operating companies in US, and he is also active. Though we have shared his profile, a detailed profile to all participants in advance, so I will not get into those details. But he's a very active social activist, I must say, a philanthropist, a thinker, a student, and a knowledgeable person on various subjects like arts, science, and humanities. And he also represents Indian community in US through various forums. So so Kapil has also joined. I'll just introduce him as well. Good evening. Kapilji, good evening and welcome. I will unmute you, yeah. Yes, now I unmute you.
I can hear you now, Sanjayji.
Yes, wonderful. So Kapilji, I was introducing my, colleagues. Vinod Kaul, he will be the co-host of this discussion. Vinod is a Vice President of Jammu Kashmir Vichar Manch, a very senior professional working with a multinational company, telecom company of Israel, Gilat, is South Asia head. Then is my colleague Kuldeep Pandita. He is our treasurer of Jammu Kashmir Vichar Manch, and he is also an architect working with JP Group, and General Secretary of Indrapuram Kashmiri Pandit Association. And then we have Renu Kak. She is also assisting me today. She is the Secretary of Jammu Kashmir Vichar Manch. She is a trainer, and a very active social worker in East Delhi. And we also have our President Dilip Mattoo and Satish Bhatt with us, and other colleagues. So a lot of my team members who work very hard on this Jammu, this Gennext talk series, which we launched during this lockdown. We organized many programs during lockdown on social media. One was the Gash Taruk, chain of programs where we had participation of leading Kashmiri artists and young artists who used to perform every day during the evening. Then we have another program called Kathpat, where we have a leading person from community speaking to one of our panelists. And then we have this Gennext talk series where we had leading Kashmiri achievers. Like we had 2-3 vice chancellors who were speakers previously. We had senior industry professionals. We had doctors. We had bureaucrats, and from all walks of life. We had journalists. Last week we had Shireen Ban on this panel. So a great activity series which we have started. So my role is only up to this. I will hand it over to Vinod. So I will also remind you that the meeting is being recorded and it is also live on Facebook. So most of the people will be watching it on our Facebook page. So I think Vinod, maybe you can start and invite Kapilji first, and then Nirmalji. I think that will be the order. Sorry, I didn't invite, I didn't introduce Kapil ji. Kapil Kaul is a good friend. He's a leading expert of Indian, aviation sector, not Indian aviation, international aviation sector. He is the CEO of CAPA, a Center for Aviation. He is a leading consultant of aviation sector, working with lots of multinational like Lufthansa, KLM, every leading aviation company of the world, which you can say, you can talk about. Kapil has worked with them. I had a chance, interacting with him while I was in FICCI. We used to organize Aero India show. So Kapil, and you might have seen him generally whenever there is an issue on aviation sector, you will find him on TV. There is a lot of demand that during that time, Kapil is, chased by media to have his opinion on various, subjects with regard to aviation. So we have already shared his profile with you, so I will not go into detail of that. So handing it over to Vinod, please. Vinod ji, please go ahead. So we'll just say Om Shanti Om. We had several meetings for, to offer our condolences to Ajay Pandita Bharati ji, who was recently killed in Kashmir, martyred in Kashmir. We'll just say Om Shanti Om 3 times and then start this meeting. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Vinod.
Namaskar, Manasani. I welcome to the session, Gennext series. Sanjay ji has talked more, introduced and has talked about session, why did we start it. So without time निमोनिके, Facebook पे कुछ ऐसे Gennext live करीब 30 to 35 people watching us. I'm sure that number is going to increase. And I'll start with Kapil ji. Welcome, Kapil ji, again to the show. Words. The topic is something which you are very well, very well aware of, and you have been in the field of aviation for long. So, to you, Kapil ji.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'd like to thank Sanjay ji. I have interacted with him many times. And I just realized that in the last 17 years, maybe more, I have been on the speaking circuit as a professional compulsion, but never had a chance, except once, to connect to our own community. So I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation, and delighted particularly that I'll be speaking with Generation Next of our community, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I like to start by just saying two things before I get down to letting you know about the structure of my conversation today. I was introduced as an aviation expert. I like to start by saying that the subject is so vast and diverse that we at best can be called as good students of aviation. I often joke with my colleagues in the office that I am an aviation expert for media more than for the industry, because the industry is very vast and very technical, changes with a great speed. So first is that I'm maybe a good student of aviation, particularly in the last 17 years. And more important, because I'm in the right company which understands aviation, thereby I may have more to share. Secondly, I hope that this conversation with the Gen Next of our community goes beyond this webinar. If they want to know more about aviation, they want to understand job prospects in aviation aerospace field, I hope that I can continue my conversation with them post this webinar as well. So thank you, Sanjay ji, for inviting me. The agenda for the next 30 minutes odd, I'd like to make it more as a conversation rather than a one-sided monologue. Though I've been given 10-15 minutes to give you an overview of the sector, both aviation and aerospace. But I like to make and hear more from the audience, more from the participants, and if there's anything that I can help them with clarifying as to what the sector can, prospects the sector can hold for them, I'll be delighted. So I'd like to limit my conversation from my side to just about 10 minutes, leaving it more for question answer sessions, which I think will be helpful in this kind of interaction. So I think the structure of the next half an hour, as I said, I'll leave it more for question answer sessions. But I'd like to introduce Kappa to the participants first, so that they're more familiar with what we do. Because aviation, we are into a B2B business. It's a niche segment. We are a sector-specific advisory firm. So most of them may not be familiar with Kappa. So I'll introduce first Kappa. Then I will possibly give you a brief overview about the sector, both aviation and aerospace globally. Then we will get to India. And I'll try to relate with examples with whatever I'm going to be saying to you about the state of the industry, the nature of the industry, the complexities of this industry. I'm hoping that I will relate it with examples so that people who are not familiar with the industry can understand. Firstly, about Kappa, we were established in 1990 in Sydney. It's a sector-specific advisory and research firm. Only does aviation, travel, and aerospace businesses globally. We have been in India for about 17 years now. We would advise across the value chain, whether it's airlines or airports or ground handling companies or maintenance repair organizations, due diligence with investors, potentially private equity firms. So we do end-to-end consulting and research, both globally as well as in India. We have staffing globally of about 165 people. We work in 6 countries. My responsibility is for South Asia and Middle East. And the office that we established here in India was in 2003. And in the last 17 years, we've completed about 200 odd projects in India and South Asia, covering aviation, travel, aerospace, both on the consulting and research side. If you have more questions about what we do, I'll be happy to take it with you during question answer sessions. Now, let's start with the industry first. I would like to start by saying that when we talk about aviation and aerospace, it's a global industry. It's more global than any other industry. Connects people, connects cultures, connects businesses like nobody else. It is the fastest and the more reliable aspect of transportation, which means that you can fly to any part of the world within 15 hours or at best within 24 hours. If you have a parcel to send to any part of the world, it can reach within 24 hours to any point of the world. So very reliable and safe, especially with the speed of transportation. Within the transportation sector, air transport has a tremendous impact on the globalization. And I can't think of how globalization would have happened without the role of aviation and connectivity in it. So when we talk about the passenger side of aviation, which is what you do with scheduled airline transport, virtually the technology is now available with respect to the new generation aircraft that have been introduced, whether it is 787s, and some of you would have flown, or 777s. More and more new generation technologies coming in. As I said, it can virtually take you nonstop from India to San Francisco in 16, 17 hours. So the technology has made sure that people can connect to destinations more quickly and more faster than it was before. Similarly, you have companies like FedEx, DHL, even Blue Dart here, that virtually can connect any parcel, any document, or even life-saving, perishable, life-saving drugs, especially high-end pharmaceutical, is transported within 12 hours to any part of the world. If you look at the size and scale of the industry, roughly over $1 trillion industry, maybe more, out of which even the airline side itself is about $872 billion. It transports, prior to COVID, 4.5 billion people every year, employs about 10 million direct employment. And in direct, the breakup of the 10 million employment is about 2.1 million for airlines, 6.9 million, 2.9 is for airlines, 6.1 is for airports and on-airport activities, and other industries like maintenance, technologies, and other million odd people. So direct employment about 10 million people. Look at the contribution of aviation. And here we need to take the impact of direct, the multiplier impact of aviation, which is the catalytic impact, induced impact. In terms of the national satellite accounts that you have globally, aviation contributes roughly about 10% of the GDPs in most 10 to 12% if you include direct, the multiplier impact aviation has, and even the induced impact of aviation. So it has a tremendous economic contribution to make. Now, if you look at the if I carry forward, carry on with the data to give it to you, roughly about 40% of the global trade is carried by aviation, but in value. In volumes, it is insignificant, but in value, 40% of your global trade is carried by international air transport. Similarly, when you look at e-commerce, and e-commerce platforms are becoming critical to economies, not only in India, but globally. 87% of the air commerce business globally is carried by air transport. Look at tourism, for example. When you look at tourism, you have inbound, both people coming into India or any country or going out of the country, except the short haul transport within Europe or North America. The most of the tourism is by air. So it has a tremendous impact on the economy, on the quality of life across the world. If you go slightly deeper and look at the aviation and get to understand the role of aviation, particularly connectivity, and you see, and these are proven studies, that when you look at connectivity and the importance of connectivity, you link connectivity with productivity. There are proven studies to prove that if you do a 10% improvement in connectivity, your labor productivity is about 0.7% of the GDP. So aviation, when we relate it to the impact it has on economy, it is much more than perhaps what most of us think. If you look at the capital investments that you make in aviation and the rate of return that you generate out of these capital investments, it is highest than any other industries. It may vary from a developing economy to a developed economy, but the range is about 16 to 28% in terms of returns from the capital investments that you make in aviation. If you look at supply chains, for example, I will relate again to the goods that we consume and the cost at which we buy it. Aviation has to play a critical role in the supply chains, because not only you minimize inventory, but you also make sure, because it's the speed and the reliability with which aviation gets these goods across the globe. It has a tremendous and a critical impact in building robust supply chains, reducing cost, minimizing inventory for companies, thereby enhancing their profitability. You have now a common theme around airports where you have high throughput distribution facilities where people put their limited inventory and can ship it out to any destination within 24 hours, minimizing inventory cost, minimizing overall cost, and minimizing even investments. And if you look at even R&D, and again, as I said, I will like to take it beyond this webinar in case you'd like to know more. The impact on R&D significant. You look at world-class cities, you relate to them with world-class airports. If you look at financial hubs, they relate to airport hubs. You look at New York as a financial hub, or London, Heathrow has an important role to play in London, to build London as a financial capital. You look at New York, for example, JFK has an important role to build New York as a financial hub, trading hub. Look at Dubai, for example, with a population of just about a few million, 10 million in UAE. It's a very economic powerhouse, largely aviation contributing 30% plus to the GDP. So I think the impact of connectivity on aviation goes beyond what we possibly are aware. And when we get deeper, it has a tremendous impact on almost every aspect of our life. Now, when we look at the Indian scenario, which is fairly nascent right now in its aviation journey. Market has grown very significantly over the last, let's say, 15, 16 years since we had the second wave of liberalization. But we still are a very underpenetrated market. You still have only 5% of the population flying from a population of 1.5 billion, nearly 4 to 5% people flying. We still have a large market of 140 million before COVID. But the upside going forward can continue for decades, not just few decades, possibly for the century. If you look at the per capita consumption of seats per capita on domestic and international compared to more advanced economies, we have possibly 4 to 5 decades of growth ahead of it. So, but and a lot to do with itself. The size of the industry in India, you could perhaps look at around $30 billion, $25, $30 billion, similar to what is the size, perhaps more than the size of railways in India. And it's beginning to make an impact. Connectivity is beginning to make impact in almost every aspect of our economy, of our personal lives, because you can fly anywhere with the advanced low-cost airlines in very low fares, creating a significant consumer surplus. And whether you're flying for business, you're flying for leisure, or you're flying for any other reason, connectivity has become important parcel of our daily lives. But aviation has a long way to go. It can attract, if the policy structure, the regulatory structure is aligned, it can generate about $250 billion of investment over the next 10 years. Its employment, which is roughly about 200,000 direct employment right now, could have a 5 times multiple in about 10 years, creating about 1 million direct jobs. So I think aviation in India is a fascinating chapter. We've just not even scratched the surface. Long way to go, provided the regulatory and the policy structure is aligned to the needs of the industry. I think we have a way to go. I will also maybe talk about job prospects, which is perhaps one of the key reasons of this webinar. That if you look at the aviation value chain, you normally think of airlines and airports. But within the airlines, you have a domestic airline, you have international airlines, you have regional airlines, you have commuter airlines, you have airlines which do remote connectivity. In US, they built on a franchise model. So within airlines, there is different segments of the industry. Within airports, if you look at on-airport activity, there is duty-free, there is food and beverage, there is non-aeronautical side of it, which is the real estate side of it. You see Delhi Airport and AeroCity, that's a part of the Delhi Airport land parcel. Next land parcel that will come there is about 1 million square feet of retail, office space and retail space. So I think within airports, there's a lot more than perhaps people are aware. And the second part, which is very critical for aviation, is the air navigation services. If you do flight radar and check how many aircraft, even with this under the COVID sort of a pandemic, which has restricted aviation, but you will see lots of aircraft moving simultaneously, almost with little separation between them. It's almost a different world and a fascinating world how airlines move in the airspace, how the air traffic is managed. Then you look at other aspects of aviation, which is general aviation, where most of the corporates use those planes to fly for their business purposes. There is helicopter, and the use of helicopters is in cleaning power lines, inter-city connectivity, and many other areas which a helicopter can be used. We are going to be soon seeing a tremendous investment in urban mobility through VTOL aircraft, which is virtual takeoff and landing aircrafts. A lot of investments that is being made to enhance urban mobility. Uber is doing a lot more. Amazon is doing a lot more there. So you will see different facets of aviation, particularly enhancing the urban mobility space in globally. And it's being talked that the first Uber flight may be in 2023. Their prototype, their aircraft is ready. So you may see soon Gurgaon to to Delhi, CP, people traveling like a mass transportation, but below the airspace, in the reported airspace, not in the designated airspace. So you can fly freely between different buildings particularly. You don't need a large runways. You can virtually take off from the roof of from any building. So there are dramatic changes expected in urban mobility as well, which will transform lives maybe in 3 to 5 years. And a lot of investment happening in those areas as well. And the other aspects of aviation would be maintenance, repair, and all people who have both as per the OEM standards and as per the regulator standards. So the maintenance itself is a big business. Unfortunately, in India, the taxation and the fiscal on the maintenance outside, and the government is trying to correct it so that the job opportunities you put opportunities in technology side. There's a lot more happening in that space, whereby tomorrow you may have a digital airline which happens to own an aircraft. So a lot of investments going in the tech field, analytics. In fact, if you can look at it, the kind of automation in core functions like revenue management, in revenue accounting, possibly in various other areas that you see artificial intelligence, robotic processes, machine learning, transforming how revenue management is done, how fleet planning is done, how network planning is done. So there are opportunities in the tech field, in the digital field. Analytics is playing a very important role. So the opportunities in the direct part of aviation are massive, provided we can get the industry in shape, provided we can get the regulation in shape, provided we can have the policy aligned to the needs of the industry. And some of this negative fiscal regime that's on the industry, if the government can ease that impact of a negative fiscal regime on the airlines, I think the job opportunities in aviation are very, very significant. Lastly, I like to say that, which is what we are actually advocating, pushing the governments, not only in India and globally, that aviation is unfortunately a government domain business. You have 8,000 airlines. The government's role, not only in India, globally, is overwhelming. We don't need globally 8,000 airlines. You need multinational airlines as you have in telecom, or you have in car manufacturing or any other industry. You can have virtually 100% investment and can have foreign direct investment up to 74, 100%. But in airlines, because we are bound by these archaic rules and regulations and conditions, and the overwhelming influence of the government, if those eases up, then you may have a much more stronger industry once the ownership rules change, once the bilateral rules change, and the rules and conditions related to aviation are made like for any other industry. And the government influence globally does sees aviation as any other business rather than a business which they want to control for strategic reasons. So there's a lot more that can happen once that eases up. And you may see a lot of investment coming to emerging markets and growth markets like India going forward if some of these regulations globally are changed. If you have any other questions, I would like to take questions and answers. As I said, one can go on and on, but I like to make this into a productive conversation. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any queries, general, specific to any job, interest in a career, any other questions, I'll be happy to take your questions.
We shall have questions after Dr. Mattoo speaks.
Okay, great. Great.
Okay. Thank you, Kapilji. Very interesting number of people who are associated with the airlines and employed by the aviation industry. I'll request before Dr. Mattoo, Dr. Nirmal Mattoo talks, I will request our Kuldeep ji to talk a few lines, and then I will hand over to to Dr. Mattoo. Kuldeep ji.
We'll have to unmute him. No? Unmuted. Kuldeep ji, you unmute yourself.
आया आवाज हमारा?
हाँ बिल्कुल.
नमस्कार. बस कुलदीप पंडिता जम्मू कश्मीर विचार मंच की तरफ तो सार नहीं स्वागत कर अभिनंदन कर तो वो बे अक लट यथ सेशनस मज जन सतम सेशन यमुक जन टॉपिक विंग्स टू योर ड्रीम्स. मे बासान यह जन वुनिक तान कपिल जन वोन तुह अम सह कह मिलमुत ज्ञान तो यह जन जम्मू कश्मीर विचार मंच यह छोड़मुत कर पे नेक्स्ट जनरेशन तथ सह क्या ना क्या नो वातना तिम नश क्या ना क्या नो वातना तिम नश क्या ज्ञान दिन चाहे सो कल्चर चाहे सो पन जबान चाहे सो थ्रू कम तरीके सिंगिंग कथ बात यन पे यह लॉकडाउन शुरू गो तन पे कोर त्रे टॉपिक शुरू सन डिफरेंट त्रे टीम अलग अलग तथ कर नंबर कथ बात यथ मज यम संजय जन तुम वोन कथ बात कर तथ मज डिफरेंट टाइप कशर बट जन तमो मज तिहद लीडर्स या कुन तौरस तम कुन चीज़स मज तम लीड कर तम अमित तिहुद डिस्कशन चलान प्रथ वीक एवरी वीक बे ब्या मारा कशर बच्चे तिहुद तिमन प्रोत्साहन कर तम गशर बोल सह कशर कित बोलान तम तथ कंपटिशन थोमुत गाश्तार कंपटिशन प्रथ वरी कर तो तमु क्या लॉकडाउन गो शुरू तमु गाश्तार बचो सर शुरू म्यूजिक शामन कर लॉकडाउन मज प्रत दह सह बढ़ो यूता कि तथ मज गई बाकी लीडर्स लीडिंग सिंगर्स J&K चले चाहे ऑल ओवर कंट्री या तम आए सारी तथ मज तो तमो कोर सह पन म्यूजिक सिस्टम बड़ जबरदस्त तौरस पे गो शुरू वनकन तह पकान वो कोर हफ्तस मज अक लट तो सोन जम्मू कश्मीर विचार मंच यह कि सन कल्चर सोन लैंग्वेज यह रोज जिंद नेक्स्ट जनरेशन मज तो यह जन यह नेक्स्ट जनरेशन नो सिस्टम कोर शुरू नेक्स्ट जन यह कोर शुरू अम सब कर शुरू अम ब्रो अक लट नबर अकिस ऑडिटोरियमस मज करो बे अक लट नबर बट ड्यू टू दिस लॉकडाउन वी कुड नॉट सो वी थॉट कि करो वो ऑनलाइन अस कोर यह शुरू यह जन सन नेक्स्ट जनरेशन वात क्या ना क्या ज्ञान वात क्या ना कुन तरीक़ु ज्ञान वात नश चाहे सह डॉक्टर्स चाहे IAS ऑफिसर चाहे जन तम पन कैरियर तथ कर तम डेवलप तमी हिसाब एज पर देयर नॉलेज एज पर वट एवर इट इज तो जम्मू कश्मीर विचार मंच हर अक लट बे स्वागत कर तुम सारनी डॉक्टर निर्मल जी को डॉक्टर कपिल जी को हम आपसे स्वागत करते हैं. आप इस मंच पे आए, हमारे इस सेशन को आपने 4 चांद लगा दिए. थैंक यू वेरी मच. ओवर टू विनोद जी.
Thank you,
Kuldeep. Just a small interruption. There are some in through chat boxes. They are asking for some questions. Timan one of ski last aspect. तो एक ऐसे upon hand raise, which is an option available in Zoom. After Nirmal ji speaks, they will be invited to ask questions. Yes. No ji.
Thank you, Kuldeep ji. Nicely explained by Kuldeep ji ki kya karan motive kya what is the basic motive of all these discussions and all these programs. I like kar be waze motive ki next generation aise timan se connect timan se kashir bare maz kathbat Kashmiri language and showcasing them. We are doing well in after migrating, and we are doing well in and stick to the roots. So that is the whole idea of all these programs. And taking forward, welcome Dr. Mattoo to the show, and it's a privilege that you are with us here today. Over to you, Dr. Mattoo, for a nice session with you.
Thank you. Good morning, New York time, and good evening, I guess, India time. I was a little bit shaken up because I thought I was going to talk to some very young people. And all of you are younger than me, I know that. but hopefully there are younger people that I'm going to talk to. And it's so
Dr.
wonderful.
Mattoo, the younger guys, there are many younger people here,
Kids
but
and youth. Yeah, they have not.
they don't put their videos on. That's the
I
problem.
get it. If they are there or they are not there, it is
That's why
direct.
we call youngsters. You know, they are kids, they are youth. But yeah, not like me. I am an old man. Oh, odd man out.
But it is wonderful to see all of you here. A group of bright young people are there listening to us. And I'm excited to be here. Obviously, there is a little bias on my part, in my excitement and the thrill that I'm getting to see all of you are Kashmiris. And that obviously is my extended family, because in your success, all of you young people, I see my success. And in your achievements, I see my achievements. And these young people are the future of the community. So when I was asked to speak, so I was trying to think, the world is so vast. What am I going to talk about? And then Ganjuji gave me some direction about that you want to relate to young Kashmiri people. That is the motive of this talk. So I said, okay, then let me say something about myself, what I have done. I am much older than most of the people here, so I have some bona fides and I have some ground that I can bring forth. So I need to tell you something about me first, and I'll go back later. I was born in Srinagar, Kashmir, and my parents were young at that time when I was born, and they had to leave Kashmir because of Pakistani Kabili raid. And they moved to Delhi, and my father became professor in Delhi University, Department of Chemistry. They were young. My mother was about 16 years older than me, and my father was about 19, 20 years older than me. So the relationship was a little different, and they were liberal people. They let me do a lot of things, which was unusual for a Kashmiri community. So I grew up in Delhi, and I did my schooling there. I went to Delhi University for pre-medical, and then I went to medical school, Rana Azad in Delhi. And after I finished the internship there, I went to US. And to tell you the truth, my goal was to go into politics. I thought that was the birthright of Kashmiris at that time. And so my father talked to me, he said, I was only about 20 years old when I finished medical school. So he said, you are too young, why don't you see the world and go around? So I said, fine. So the goal was I'll go out for 3 to 5 years, get some training, get some advanced degrees, and then go back to India and go into politics. As a family, we used to go to Kashmir for 3 months. My father being in such a job in which he could afford to get 3 months off in summer. And we used to take 15 days. We used to leave school 15 days before it closed and 15 days after it opened. So we were about 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months in Kashmir. And we had a joint family, my father and his older brother and younger brother, and the children, extended children. We all lived together. And to this day, we have maintained that tradition. I'm the eldest male in my family, but everything that happens in this extended family, they at least talk to me before doing anything. And I keep a watch on all of my grandnephews and grandnieces. So it's still a wonderful experience. So we used to go to Kashmir and maintained our Kashmiri traditions very strongly, the language, the festival, the food, and what are the different nuances are there of being a Kashmiri. We experience it all through. I have a younger brother, and both speak Kashmiri, even though we grew up in Delhi. I was born in Kashmir, but I grew up in Delhi right after Kabili raid. And my brother was all his life in Delhi. And in Delhi, it was our experience as a Kashmiri Pandit was a little different. I knew I had a tremendous advantage over the rest of the people in Delhi. Delhi was at that time, I'm talking in 50s, mostly Punjabis who had come from Pakistan. They were refugees. They were tough group of people, very industrious, very hardworking, and were mostly involved in business. So whereas I came from a highly educated family in Delhi, for Delhi people. My father was a professor, all my uncles, cousins, they were all doctors or engineers or professors. So I did well in school. School was relatively easy for me because I had to compete with a group of people where schooling wasn't. You can't hear me or something? Hello?
Yeah, it's clear. Please go
Clear,
ahead.
clear. We can hear you.
And I was active in sports. So then what happened in our parents' time, my grandparents' time, everybody used to go to Britain for higher education. That was the goal. But that was particularly in medical fields. I had members of my family who studied in England and did their MRCPs and FRCSs. But that was pre-World War II. And all my professors told me you have to go to England to study because they had their MRCPs and FRCSs. Then I had a discussion with my father, and he said, look here, I'm in teaching, I'm in research. This is the American century. So if you go, for whatever reason, to see the world, you have to go to America. If you want to learn some cutting edge medicine, you have to go to America, not to England. So even though many of my cousins, my friends, my classmates landed up in Australia, Britain, Middle East, but I chose to come here and I came here. And my experience here was that despite biases and the glass ceilings that are there, the opportunity USA offers to outsiders, to immigrants, are virtually phenomenal as compared to any other society, any other country. If you want to excel in business, it's up to you how good you are in that. But even in academic fields and administrative fields, you can go up. And this I'm talking about 1968 when I came here. At present time in America, a lot of them, maybe 50% of the top 20 companies are headed by Indian Americans and many other communities also. And I, for example, am an example that in an outside country, which was a leading country, I wasn't going to some country which was not advanced like advanced, that I could become CEO of a hospital system. I could become co-chairman of Chief Medical Officers Council of Columbia Presbyterian System with 2 medical schools there. They gave me that opportunity. And the main thing is that in this country, hard work pays. They see what your quality is, what your qualifications are, how committed you are. So then I trained in India, in New York, in medicine and in nephrology, and I'm a kidney specialist and passed the regular examinations. So I'm going to digress a little bit that what my Kashmiri pun is about and what being kosher is about. You know. We all have multiple identities, multiple. We have an ethnic identity of being a Kashmiri. We have a caste identity of being a Brahmin. We have linguistic identity of speaking a language, Kashmiri. We have racial identity, Caucasian, North Indian. We have dietary, I can keep on going, our dietary identity, we're meat-eating Brahmin. That makes us something different than large Brahmin segment. So all these things are involved in our development and in our vision about what life is and what our future is. That it forms, these identities form what we are. I can see in myself, complete, and my children. Obviously, the new environments and new circumstances do play a role in what you are. They play a big role in your life also, but how you handle them is from your core beliefs, from your core development. And they drive our ethical values, they govern our moral compass, and direct us into what we want to do in life. It is ingrained in us, these identities. We all the time go and access them without even realizing them. They tell us how to live our life, and they become, it can't be part of DNA, but they become virtually part of our DNA. So I see myself now at this age, and my parents died relatively young, but I don't think I'm any different than my father, or my mother, or my brother, or my grandparents, which I didn't know very well. And I try to inculcate similar values, structure, and same commitment to our culture, to my son, to my grandkids, and I have 3 grandsons, to my niece, and whoever Kashmiri I meet here, we talk about it, and we try to go back into nostalgia and try to think what we were, what we are, because of what. I'm not saying that Kashmiri somehow are superior to any other group. I don't believe in that at all. I think everybody is same all over the world. 2% people all over the world have IQ over 130, and that will be in Kashmiris, and that will, if you go to Zululand, in the bush, that will be the same thing. But the opportunities are not the same. The role models are not the same all over. And that plays a big role. But there is something that is distinct about us, which I want all young people to understand. And that is what defines us. I can guess more or less, most of you, how you are going to behave if you are caught in some circumstances. How you will carry yourself. You are predictable to me because you are a Kashmiri. I know you have these identities. How you want to live your life, what you want to have your future generations do. We more or less have a very similar way of looking at life. That we do improve, we do not necessarily improve, grow with changing times and changing circumstances, but more or less our core values are very similar, regardless of how rich you are, how educated you are. We are Kashmiri Pandits, and we are heirs to that tremendous legacy. Kashmir was seat of learning for Shaivites, for Vaishnavites, for Buddhists, and I'm going to quote names which may be redundant because most of you are familiar with them, but I just want everybody to understand that it's important to know who you are, what you are, and that's what will govern your life. We have produced great grammarians, poets, philosophers. You know, the name you take Aryabhatta, Kalata, Bhattatata, Panini, Patanjali, Somadeva, Vishnu Sharmana. I can keep on for hours. All aesthetic school of India with Bhama, Anandvardhana, Avnagupta, poets, Bilhana, musicians, Shrarang Bhatt, Natya Shastra, writers, all Indic humanities were developed only by Kashmiris and nobody else. All the schools were from Kashmir. I'm just naming them because I want everybody to remember that heritage. Remember that all the time, and it pays off. It has dividends in life. Now, you know, every country, every society, every small family, every big family has same experiences in life. They have great kings, they have tyrants. They have rains, they have droughts. They have famines, they have bumper crops. We all go through the same experience. You go to Alaskan person in Alaska, you go to person in America, you go to person in Zululand, you go to person in Kashmir. Experiences are same. We all face same thing. But each community, each nation Each state chooses what is important to them. They focus on certain things. The Sikhs want to be warriors. They want to save the faith. But the Kashmiris, for some reason, choose to excel in gaining knowledge. They chose to excel in that. And that is our heritage. That is our commitment to our ancestors. That they spent so much time, so much effort to show us a way. They laid the paths that we continue to go on those paths. I'm not saying to limit ourselves, I'll come to that. But that is very important to us. And just anecdotal, when in Kashi for thousands of years, when a person used to graduate, they used to walk 3 steps towards Kashmir because they wanted to be accepted by Kashmiri scholars. They wanted to be like Kashmiri scholars. This was their graduation ceremony. And you must have read a lot of stories about Sharda Fate, one of the oldest universities that we established. Even Takshashila, most of the teachers and abbots and in Nalanda were Kashmiris. So we have this, we are heirs to that commitment. I'm serious about that. And we have to inculcate these values and this knowledge to our younger folks. And I look at myself, I came to the United States, the only thing that I had, they were not allowing any money to be brought with you. The only thing I had with me was my degree, my MBBS degree. I was an educated person. I could have done good other places, maybe not as good as America because it was a accepting country to outsiders. But the education helped me because they can take anything away from you. Anybody can take anywhere in the world, but not what you know in your brain. They can't pull it out of their own brain. So, but there is also in what I have done here, this is immigrant story. Immigrants do well anywhere because they leave their country, they have no choice. If they want to go back, they have to tell the family back home, what did you do? You went all the way so far. What did you get out of it? So Punjabis went to Canada, they bought 3/4 of Canada. Gujaratis went to East Africa, they became the richest people, most advanced people, the doctors, and the same Gujaratis who were farmers in Gujarat, same Punjabis who were farmers in Punjab, not doing well. And you see Chinese, they went to Indonesia, they went to Malaysia, they went to Thailand, and they did so well there. It's an immigrant thought. All things that are holding you back in your own country, you are free of them. You can experiment. You can take risks. You can take chances. And so other thing I tell young people is that, look here, be immersed in learning. I want you to focus on what you are doing in learning. You want to be the greatest ophthalmologist, you want to be the greatest engineer, mechanical engineer, or chemical engineer, whatever you want to be. But learning is broader than that. That expertise that you have developed, focus in one thing, is great, very valuable. But your learning has to be much broader, to the broader understanding of the world. There is a comedian, Steve Martin, you must have seen his movies. He once said, he wrote in his autobiography, you are eventually going to use everything you have learned. And I'm older than all of you here probably. And I know certain things come to me that I had learned 50 years back, some circumstances, something I say that I had learned long back, some references for something. So learn. It's never a waste of time that you know how the grass grows or how the flowers grow or how some mechanical thing happens. They all come to help you at the end. Secondly, I was thinking about it yesterday because I was told only day before yesterday to talk about it, that what has helped me tremendously is also my Kashmiri upbringing. There are certain values like be honest, work hard, काम करो ठीक पर, काम करो पर ठीक पर, शाम न स्वात. Be honest. Be respectful. We show tremendous respect to our elders. We didn't even name them. I couldn't call somebody Mamaji or this thing. We made sure that we don't show those distinctions, that we respect everybody that were our elders. No greed. First thing I said, we're followers of Saraswati. We're not followers of Lakshmi. That was inbred in us. It helped us, but it also produced little problem. And I also noted for the young people, they have to realize that one has to be lucky also in life, to be in the right place at the right time. But the thing is, once you are there, you have to understand and cultivate a system and ability to recognize that, to grab that opportunity. Then you have to work hard and then excel in it. The Aaron Sorkin was giving a commencement speech to young people, similar that I am thinking I'm talking to. And he said, he writes beautifully, so his syntax and his way of putting the words together is nice. He said, the world does not care how many times you fall down, as long it is one fewer time than the number of times you got back up. And at the same time, you should not complain about why I'm not. You are dealt like in a card game. Cards. How you play these cards is very important. You know, Mark Twain said, people get very upset, why I'm not like this. Why? So Mark Twain in his book, I remember reading, said, no, the world doesn't owe you anything. The world has been here long before you came. We can use the world, but it doesn't owe you. So effort has to be yours. So, and I also want to all the young people to understand that you're going to face obstacles in life. You're going to have failures. But what you have to do is that you have to get up, reevaluate the situation, see if it was the right opportunity, see if it is the right thing that you are involved in. Don't waste time. And with perseverance and working hard, try to reach where you want to reach. There's nothing greater than working hard. No matter how much you are educated, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, it doesn't matter how many millions you have. If you want to go further up, you have to work hard. Because every day, every year, from Harvard, from Yale, from Delhi University, from Princeton, from MIT, from Caltech, from universities in Australia, Cambridge, Oxford, Bombay, there are millions of people, brilliant people graduating. Not everybody excels. Not everybody excels. That tradition we Kashmiris have, we have excelled everywhere. We were about 10 students in Delhi University, Kashmiri Pandits, when I was going there in 1960, maybe 10, 12. Everybody knew us. Everybody knew us. So we have to, if the obstacles come, fine, learn how to deal with them. There's a quarter in American football, there's a position called quarterback. It's the main position in the game. And they're not terribly intellectual, these quarterbacks, but Drew Brees was a great quarterback, said, it's not a matter of if you will face adversity in your life, but when, means everybody will face adversity. So when adversity knocks on your door, see if it can be an opportunity. You know, I can see when the first time somebody saw a lemon, he took a bite of the lemon. Skin was very bitter, the inside was very sour. And he said, what kind of fruit is this? And threw it out. But there was another bright guy. He saw an opportunity. He made lemonade out of it. So these are the opportunities you have to look even in obstacles and learn from these obstacles and these. And another thing is, you know yourself better than anyone. So you develop your own compass. Take risks, intelligent risks, calculated risks. You should not be afraid of anything. You should be fearless. By fearless, I don't mean stupid. Fear should be something that tells you, hey, watch out, alerts you. Then go about and do your thing fearlessly. I have no fear of anything. No fear. But I'm very careful how I tackle, how I think of future. And then also how you organize yourself. James Henman said in another commencement speech, he says, I have learned that I can pretty much do anything as long as I am methodical and diligent about it. That as long as is very important. You can do everything. No, you cannot do everything, but in life you can do most of the things you want. But you have to be very diligent about it and methodical about it. And that should be the motto. Fearless, don't be afraid of obstacles, evaluate all opportunities and circumstances. Another thing I say is always question yourself, particularly when you are young. Can you do something special beyond your walls and your parameters and whatever you have done? Can you do something special? Can I do something for human society that will uplift it? That should be all the time in your mind, questioning. Can I impact society in a positive manner? And some simple things that your mother told you, grandmother, great, is be kind, be humble, be egoless. There is no such thing of this Western concept of healthy ego. I don't believe in that. It doesn't help at all. It clouds your judgments. Be egoless. So now I'm going to digress for a couple of minutes only. I'm going to say something that probably most Kashmiri Pandit parents won't say. I grew up in a very strong Kashmiri Brahminical tradition. Most of my relatives are all engineers, doctors, professors, teachers, whatever they are. But once I came here, the inhibitions that I had, they became less. And those are the inhibitions of the value of our community, our family, our society. Because once you come here, you say, look here, I have come here, I have to excel, I have to do whatever I need to do. But that should be a goal anywhere. Because I see Sardars used to go to Madras, used to go to Delhi, Kashmir, and do very well, which they could not do in their own place because they had a new lease on life. So when you move any place, try to see, okay, you are getting a new lease in life, actually every day, like a Buddhist concept that you are new every second. You don't carry anything. It's not a continuous Atma carrying you. You are a new entity every second. Think that partly. So what I did, unlike I developed a dialysis company here. And there are hundreds and thousands of nephrologists in this country. Americans from Harvard and from Yale, and I came from Delhi University. I look different, I talk different, I have an accent. My religion is different, my linguistic base is different, I have a Kashmiri ethos. Why didn't these people do? But that, I think, was my immigrant thing, my move, my commitment, which Kashmiris have always been moving. My father moved, my grandfather moved. That when you go, you want to accomplish the best that society has to offer to you. You go to Madras, you do the best Madras can offer it to you. So I was trying to figure out why they didn't do the same thing that I did. These local boys, they're natives. They have so much advantage over me. I guess they were too comfortable and content. And that's fine to be comfortable and content. But at the same time, you have to sometimes ask yourself, do you want to do something? I waver on that. Contentment is a great thing that one can have. Struggle is not always a great thing, but at the same time, you have to understand yourself, have your own compass, and follow that compass. I was an immigrant. I had some confidence, analyzed all the scenarios that could go wrong. I talked to my family. I said, look, I'm going to do this thing. We may have to sell our house. This doesn't work well, but let me do it. And you have to convince yourself also intelligently and your family and see what you can do. Now, many years later, I have developed, it's the largest private dialysis company in America. I have one son, Aditya, who's a nephrologist like me, but he went to school here, went to medical school here. And he did an MBA also from Stern School here. A good student, excelled in studies. And then joined NYU, New York University, as a nephrologist, as a transplant nephrologist. After 3-4 years, when he's gone up the professorial rank, he comes to me, he says, I want to leave this, quit it. So it was a little bit of a shock because we were doing well financially and going up in the academic system. But then I thought of my father. My father wanted me to go into straight sciences, chemistry or physics like him. I chose medicine. And then instead of staying in purely medicine, I took a side step to go into the dialysis business. So he said he wants to start a venture capital firm. And he started that. He left his work, he left medicine to some extent. And he gets invited all over to evaluate different medical firms, but he's going outside medicine also. So I feel it's an uncomfortable thing for my parents. That's why I say many parents, Kashmiri parents particularly, won't recommend that. You get a government job, you get a good job, you don't step out of it. But this generation, at least my generation, and the future Kashmiri Pandits are taking that chances. So I want to recommend them strongly, do those things. I see my son, he's becoming an entrepreneur. And he's excited. He works longer hours than what he did as a physician, as a transplant nephrologist, but he's doing. Then the last thing I'll tell you is that the world has given all of us a lot. Intelligence, made sure that we are not sick. We're lucky that a car doesn't hit us outside. There are a lot of blessings all of us have. Lot of blessings. And there are 7 billion people working hard to make me live this way. My water is clean, air is okay, my medicines I take are not adulterated. I am dependent on every human being on this planet. Nobody is throwing a bomb at my house. All of us to understand that. We are indebted to everybody else, and we owe to them. So in my, whatever I could do, I established a Center for India Studies at State University of New York, Stony Brook. I established an endowment there, and it is in Indian aesthetics and Indian humanities. I limited it to that because it mostly limits us to a Kashmir studies. Because everything before 14th century, classing Indian humanities, most of the people were Kashmiris. If you take 100 top people in India, I think 80 were from Kashmir in these disciplines. And university in return established the endowed chair and my wife and my name at the university. So I'm trying to do and I thought this way we have so far had close to 25,000 students take courses on Indic humanities and Indian subjects so far in last few years. Now, for all of you, medical fields are evolving because of aging of population. We have such a shortage of doctors in India, in the world, in India, in America, because there used to be, when I came to this country, there was no internal medicine doctor, would be a cardiologist, will do endoscopies, be a gastroenterologist, will listen to your chest, be a pulmonologist. That's not acceptable now in most of the countries. To do the same thing, we need 15 different type of cardiologists. Some is an echocardiologist, some is husbandal cardiologist, some is a interventional cardiologist, same thing in every field. So there is tremendous need in medical field for doctors. When I came in 1968, they used to have 16,000 doctors produced every year. They have gone to up to about 18,000. So in America, there is still a big dearth of doctors. It's going to get worse. Same thing in India also. The big dearth of doctors. So the field is still open. People are living longer. So there's an organic growth for the need of medical profession. So the needs of medical. So what I know, there are problems in coming to this country. If you want to come, there's a whole India to serve, whole India that needs all of us actually. So in medical fields, there is a tremendous potential and possibility in every country. So it's a good field. So I think I'll stop. I can keep on talking, but I'll stop at this. And I hope I was of some.
Extremely wonderful. So actually, we need to give some time to participants. But otherwise, I would have loved to go for 1 more hour. It was really insightful.
Wonderful to listen to you, Dr. Mattoo. The Malakuru touch right from the immigrant ethos to you wove it very nicely. I can say in summary, you wove it so nice, the journey and what how it connects to the next gen who are listening. Thank you very much for the wise words. And I allowed one thing, Kashmiri upbringing should help in your growth to whatever you are today, in your stature, and being honest, respect of the elders. Wonderful. I'm sure that the next lucky Bozan Bozan and thank you for being with us. I choose my request Karan, any questions we have. We have a couple of questions. Dr. KK Bhatt had a question for Kapilji. Dr. Bhatt, I'll unmute you. If you can unmute yourself.
Yes.
I think he's not there, but his question I'll read it.
You can read out his question.
Yeah, he's a question for Kapilji that you covered your aviation sector nicely. He has a question: how come you got into the aviation space where Kashmiri Pandits generally don't go?
You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did. So, I would say this: before I joined this consulting work, which is now 17 years for me, I had a prior about a decade of airline experience. I worked for a couple of airlines. I worked for, you can say, building a charter airline in India. So prior to that, I was with an airline before I joined consulting. But I must confess that everything that has happened with me has happened by chance. So I won't say that I loved aviation, I loved flying. It just happened that I met an owner of a company when I was with my first job, which was at ITC, Welcome Group. And as a part of sourcing institutional business, and crew business used to be a very big business those days. So I happened to be in meet an airline owner as a part of my sales and marketing activities. And those days he offered me much higher salary than I could have ever got where I was. And then that started my journey. But I was grateful to that company because they spent a lot of money and training and gave me a tremendous exposure. And once I was in, I didn't feel like going out. It had its own ups and downs because the industry went through various phases, and you face those consequences as well. But I've enjoyed it. I've spent a lot of time now with the industry. So, but I will say this to you: I came in just by chance, and it's been a long time, over 25 years in aviation. So, but I came by chance. It was not by design; it was by default. And I didn't know aviation at all, and I can't profess to know aviation now because, as I said, at best one can qualify to be a good student. But I think I came by default, stayed in. I was maybe persuasive. My perseverance was there. I mean, obviously, if you show commitment and obviously you're and God has to be kind with you. But it has not been an easy journey. Aviation, as you know, is a very, very tough industry. It can, just like COVID is transforming everything, it can just devastate you. So I've held my nerve, and God has been kind as well. But by default, I entered. Yeah. But prior to doing this consulting, I did about 10, 12 years with airlines. About 18 odd narrow-bodied airline. I was heading commercial for an airline. So I had a fair bit of background before I joined aviation in terms of consulting. So, but by default, not by design.
Okay. There is one more question from Parth for Kapil. I can unmute him. Yeah, Parth.
Yeah. हमारा नमस्कार सारनी कपिल सर बस में आप क्वेश्चन पूछने मारा है कि यूजन उनके कोविड इफेक्ट शो ऑल ओवर which has hit most aviation and tourism. How do you see the ongoing projects in India, especially the upcoming airport projects?
Before industry entered COVID, it was in a very fragile state already. Except if you look at Indigo, rest of them were struggling. They had no balance sheet, no cash, no assets to monetize. So it was a very, very fragile industry. Most of the players, and most of the players in India right now, except Indigo, are technically bankrupt. But we don't have laws and regulations to international best practices which don't allow a technically bankrupt company to operate. So the point is that they were very vulnerable, and COVID has really devastated everything. It's an extreme impact. This is an impact in once in a century. Nobody knows that what will be at the end of the tunnel. So right now we can see a demand destruction which is visible, possibly 50 to 60% of traffic erosion for this fiscal itself, 200 to 250 aircraft surplus than what we have now. And maybe Q3 onwards, you may see a supply side, serious supply side correction. So the impact would be perhaps at least 2 to 3 years. And that is going to already impact the expansion of airlines because most of them are going to lose a lot of money. Some may not even survive. The amount of recapitalization that the industry requires is roughly about $2.5 billion. And the cash gap to what they require to have on their books and what they have is another $2 billion. So I think it will impact expansion of airlines. You will see a smaller industry. Very few will survive. And all the airport projects, which is Delhi Airport, Mumbai Airport, I think they will, and all the CapEx programs that were already in works at Bangalore or other airports across India, all of them have to take a pause now for about 2 years because primarily India was about a 140 million domestic traffic, 70 to 75 million international. So now it is zero. So everything has to be rebuilt now. And the conditions of rebuilding this traffic back to pre-COVID requires a lot of money, requires policy intervention, government support. So it's going to be a long drawn battle. It will impact all the projects for sure because the traffic rebuilding has to happen from a zero base now and gradually build it up, maybe take a couple of years, 2-3 years. And not only it will impact airports, general aviation, maintenance companies, ground handling companies, but it'll impact tourism, hotels. So it's going to be the entire value chain is going to be significantly impacted. And I would see at least a couple of years, if not more, of this impact, 2 to 3 years. And that is if the announcement of a vaccine being found in a couple of years by the end of this fiscal is true, if that doesn't happen and there is a second wave, the various form of mutation of this pandemic. So anything can happen. So at least 2 years is the minimum that I can think before we can get back to pre-COVID.
Thank you. Now Sanjay Kaul has a question. Sanjay.
Yes, I can. Kapilji, first of all, nice to see you again after a long time, though we meet each other a number of times. From my side, I am from a general aviation background, and for professional people, we for Kashmiri Pandits, we have percentage of the people in the aviation industry, and yes, it's less, and we would like to have more of our people into the industry. Nevertheless, the question for Mr. Kapil is, so two questions actually from my side, though I represent an OEM in India. I got two questions. First is that our government of India talks about the ease of doing business. And since last 3 months, actually, 3 months, I have been, getting into the circles with this, the documentation I have to go, to make the things happen. And plus, again, one more question is about the regulatory body. You might have seen that. I don't know whether you have seen it, but I have seen it since last 3 months. They have been very harsh on the general aviation and on the scheduled airlines, and the documentation is too much. It's not happening. It's creating a lot of tension. Actually, it's for me, it's creating a lot of tension. So, any on that?
So you are talking about an AOP license. Are you at the AOP stage right now?
No, not really. It's a maintenance. The aircraft have not flown for 3 months, and the documentation required for them to fly, the pilots, everything, it's havoc.
So there are two aspects to it. One, there is no ease of doing business in airlines, at least in aviation. The regulator is archaic. We are governed by 1937 Aircraft Act. I was a part of a committee which suggested changes. In fact, we suggested as a company that we should have a new Aircraft Act. You need to rewrite the act rather than modify it. But we have an archaic rules and regulations. And more important, the system is not modernized. Plus, as I said, there is a tremendous bureaucratic culture there, which will make a very simple process very complicated for reasons I don't want to share on a live television, live debate. But there are institutional integrity issues which have to some extent got significantly cleaned up. But there are reasons why they will hold you, why will they will make it complicated. It's because there is a cost of that go to individuals themselves. But the process it's not, you look at maintenance companies, you look at airlines, airports, even licensing of airports. It's an extremely complex process. It can be made very, very simplified, because we were a part of the committee which did a task force to do capacity building at DGC on lines with IASA. But unfortunately, they maintain the old act, old rules, and also CAR, and also sometimes use IASA regulations to whenever it's convenient. I don't see that changing till we professionalize the regulator, get independent experts into it. And it was suggested, as you would know, that a Civil Aviation Authority of India would be constituted. It will not be, it will be independent genuinely, it get some experts, but that didn't happen. So you'll have to deal with it. There's nothing that you can do about it.
Okay, thank you. We have Sudhir Paul Virji. I will just unmute you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. First of all, thank you, Kapil Kolji. Great insights from you, sir. And we are very fortunate to have you here, such a great personality. And from a Kashmiri community, we really feel very proud to have you here, sir.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. My son is an aspirant in an aviation industry, and he is right now in class 11th and looking forward going in class 12 in another 1 or year or so. So he has a huge interest in aviation and wants to become a commercial pilot going forward. Is there anything we can consider at this moment, and being in class 11th right now, and what are the opportunities here in India as well as in abroad where we should look at going forward?
So I think opportunities in India are tremendous. If you look at minus this COVID and subject to some regulatory and policy and fiscal regime changes, you would require 14,000 pilots by 2028. It may get extended by a couple of years. So there is a huge requirement because, as I said, industry is not gone. We have just about 670 planes. Going forward, you will in the next 2 to 3 decades, you will be 10,000 aircraft. Not only in the schedule side, general aviation, helicopters, so tremendous opportunity. So I think he needs to wait till he passes 12. He has to secure about 50% minimum to 55% in physics and mathematics as a critical enabler for him to qualify. Then he must be medically fit. There is a class 1 medical test, which has to be cleared by a designated medical practitioner by DGCA. Then you have to do class 1 act before you take CPL. Then the process is about 18 months to 24 months. Depends where you take that course from. You have a ground classes of 500 hours. You would need flying training on a single and multi-engine for about 200 hours. Then you need about simulator time for a particular type-rated aircraft that you do, and then you will have, and you also have to clear DGC exams. You have an option to do it before or after. It's about 18 months job, and I think he's at the right time because he's going to pass out in next year, and by the time he is available for training, which will be maybe 2022, I think by then the industry would have settled. But my suggestion would be that, and this is costly. I will tell you, I think if you go for an airline cadet program, it's very costly. If you do it without it, it's also very costly. And but I would suggest that there are international universities like Embry-Riddle, which is what we regard as Harvard of aviation. You would need to perhaps do a bachelor's in aeronautical management or bachelor's in aviation management, and they give you option to do a CPL for about 200 hours in multi-engine. So you have a graduation in aviation, and you become a pilot as well. And then you have an option depending upon job prospects to either do a master's in aerospace aviation or aviation, or you have already a CPL. You can continue to maintain its currency and then decide, depending upon the supply demand situation for pilots, you can decide to go for becoming a first officer. India will have a lot of opportunities, but my advice would be that he completes his graduation and does a bachelor's in aviation, and simultaneously takes adoption of a CPL from the same college, and then gradually, depending upon the demand and supply situation at that time, he can decide either to pursue a master's and also keep his CPL currency valid, and then he can decide whether he needs to become a pilot or he needs to become an aviation professional. But there are a lot of opportunities. I think he needs to be very positive. It has its ups and downs, but I think for young people, it's the 3 to 4 decades of opportunity going forward. You have to be careful. It takes a lot of money, as I said, but it's much better you do a bachelor's from a recognized university plus do a CPL, and then weigh your options either for a master's or taking a pilot's job. And if you require any further, anything further inputs in it, you could call me. Sanjay ji is my number. I'll be more than delighted to help in any manner I can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I have Renu Kak has a question. Renu Kak.
Yeah.
One more. There are 2 Renu Kaks.
Yes.
It's the same one.
Please unmute.
There's one more Renu Kak.
Yeah, please go ahead, Renu ji. Renu ji, you have a question, I believe. Hello.
You have to unmute her.
Yeah, we have unmuted her.
Am I audible?
Yes. Please go ahead.
I want.
There's a audio issue. You have to be a bit loud.
Hello. Now is it all right?
Yes.
Yeah. So my question is to Dr. Mattoo. As I'm planning to pursue a medical career, I've always been confused about pursuing forensics or psychiatry. So is there something like a particular criteria that I should look for the correct choice that I need to?
Nirmal, you will have to unmute yourself.
No, you were, but I didn't get, I couldn't hear it. She was breaking up. The question was, if anybody can.
Please repeat, Renu.
Your voice was breaking up.
Like, am I audible now? Is it clear?
Yes.
Breaking up, but I'll try to figure out what you're asking.
You can type. That's a better thing. We heard you, but if you can type, I'll read it out.
Yeah, sure.
Meanwhile, there is another question. It is not mentioned his name. The chat books for Dr. Nirmal Mattoo. Dr. Saab, would you be kind enough to share with the young Kashmiri Pandits here the drags / inhibitions that a typical Kashmiri Pandit would get rid of or get diluted in an advanced economy / Western Christian democracy for growth?
I'll
I'll just repeat.
His name is Dipinder Bhatt. I can unmute him also.
What were the questions? I didn't get them.
The further question I could be, would you be kind enough to share with young Kashmiri Pandits here the drags or inhibitions that a typical Kashmiri Pandit would get rid of or get diluted in an advanced economy of Western Christian democracy for growth? A little bit complicated.
This is a
basically what inhibitions we should get rid of to grow in a Western country, Christian democracy.
In the Western democracy, there are. If you're going to talk about Western Europe, if you're, I don't know, take part of what you include in that. If it is England, Germany, Italy, France, the Indian doctors are doing very well. You're talking about physicians, right? That's the question.
Yeah.
And you always have a fear of losing your identity. It depends upon how strong and comfortable you are. I think I heard the question that way, right? If there is drags or inhibitions that get diluted, I still didn't get the question completely right.
For the typical growth of a Kashmiri Pandit, there are some drags or inhibitions which are in any in a Western Christian democracy. So how does it? How do you get rid of it?
There is a big difference between when I came and now. Even in England, there was a clear glass ceilings were there which you could not break. You couldn't go up. You could see them, what's happening upstairs, but you could not reach it. America was a little less, but we have had Kashmiris here, like P.K. Shah, who came here in 69 or 70 and excelled and is in charge of Cedar Sinai, where all the top rich society, Hollywood, and people go to take care, and he's on television. America, I'm not saying there is no bias. There is bias, there is racism. But if you're in educated class, you transcend that. You can do that in America, and now in England also. because I was listening to seeing a comedian. He was talking about racism, and he said, you know, if I am in the bed, it's a white English comedian, and I'm sick, and door opens, an Indian comes, I say, ah, good, good. Is that racism that I want Indian doctor? I don't want British doctor. So to bring it into a joke on national television shows that acceptance. And Indians did very well. And the Kashmiris, I think, let me tell you this way, at a family level, which I noticed here in America, in Kashmiri communities, there were a lot of divorces. So I was wondering why. I mean, it wasn't seen before. That the women in India and the rest of the India got liberated much earlier, maybe 2 generations earlier. The Punjabi woman will take food to her husband who's fighting the battlefield on a horse. Kashmiris didn't do that. They got their PhD, but they had to clean their brand outside early morning. So when couples came here, the men continued that tradition. And the women were liberated. They were making as much money as the husbands were. They were respected equally. So we had a lot of divorces here. I know personally about 30, 40 people that I know, right? So men may have to change a little bit of attitudes, the way we see things, but you know, most of my upbringing was a little different than many of you because I grew up in Delhi. It was a little different way of looking at life. But you'll see in air Christianity. It's part of the cosmos. But in America, I personally feel in another 50 years, and most of Western Europe, it's going to be Hindu-Buddhist countries. Because right now in America, in the last census, 24% people said they have no religion. And that means they are Hindu-Buddhist tradition they have taken, not the rituals, but they go for meditation, they go for yoga. In their lingo, in their talks, they'll say, oh, I'll do it in my next life, or this is my karma. These are blasphemous statements in a Christian society. So Western Europe and America is getting to be a Hindu-Buddhist society, the way they live their life, the way they see the world. They're changing from a dogmatic, doctrine-oriented societies. Was I able to answer part of your question, but I'm not even sure whether I got the question right.
You got it right, sir. I think you answered it to an extent, but I'm trying to unmute him, but I'm sorry, I'm not able to unmute the gentleman. Let's go to, this is the question to you, Dr. Mattoo. She was not able to talk. The voice was cracking. She's Vasudha. She is 12th plus young Gen. The question is that she is planning to pursue medical career, and she's confused about pursuing forensic sciences and psychiatry. So is there something like a particular criteria that she should look for a correct choice between?
Is she a physician already?
No,
Has
she just plus 12 plus 12. She just finished 12. So she is now following these two fields.
She's actually appearing for the, eligibility test for medical, that is called NEET.
What's her name is?
Vasudha.
Vasudha, wow. You're quite young and early in the game, medical game, to try to figure out. You must have been already somehow thinking about it for some other reasons, not necessarily that you're getting into medicine. Maybe reading books or seeing what's happening in the world. Both of them are, they work very close together, forensic science and psychiatry. You must be seeing a lot of these American televisions, Chicago PD or NCIS, or this where the doctors and the psychiatrists and the guy who is doing autopsies and the forensic doctors are working together. You can do both, but anything that you pick up will have a lot of other thing in it. Anyway, if you become a forensic specialist and if you become a psychiatrist, then it depends. Once you are in, say you become a psychiatrist, what do you want to do? What kind of psychiatry you want to practice? What kind of academic field you want to go in? You are talking about Jungian type of psychiatry, or you are talking about you understand what you want to do further. You will learn more, and I'm telling you, 80 to 90% people change. But I have a distant relative growing here, and she wanted to be a dentist since she was 7, 8 years old. And she became a dentist. So she got into medical school, but she went to dental school. So I don't know what was driving that so much, that she had thought when she was 10 years old that she wanted to be a dentist, or 12 years old. So once you get into medicine, you will have a lot of time to figure out what you want to be. But they are overlapping, distinct specialties, but overlapping specialties. You have to know each other. But they are separate specialties. If you want to become just doing psychoanalysis, sitting on a chair with a patient on a couch, that's different. But if you want to become part of a police department as a psychiatrist, or part of a forensic lab as a psychiatrist where they get bodies and you have to film, that's totally different. If you want to become a person who analyzes what this person should be like, this killer or this robber or this thing, that's another type of psychiatry. Yeah, so it's not like what we used to do 50 years back. These fields have diversified so much. It's unbelievable. So much. I hope I answered your question. You have time to make that decision.
I think I hope the question was answered. We have another question. She's also a young girl for for Kapil. Kapilji, she's a young girl. She's talking about I think a couple of questions. Let me try to merge them together. Become a professional engineer in the field of aerospace. What is required?
I mean, aerospace is pretty vast. So, is it aircraft maintenance engineering? Is it an AME that she's, or what is she specifically?
Her audio is not working, but I think she's talking about professional engineers. So I think then the other question is that what are the main areas in aviation where it can be worked? I think the engineering side. What are the specific segments in the engineering side of aviation?
I think she must be referring to aircraft maintenance engineers, which is AMEs. What you require for that, you need a 2-year course. These are regulated courses by DGCA, and the colleges are by Director General of Civil Aviation. Test to qualify the common entrance test. You would need 2-year academic and 2-year live training with an airline. So I think AME is you need to just basically do pass the exams, which is joint entrance test conducted at DGCA. I think you can come to do an AME after doing a 3-year bachelor, or you can do avionics or maintenance, mechanical engineering, and then take a test. But test you have to take. It's a common entrance test, and you need to qualify that, and then possibly, as I said, then you have to do a 2-year course, which is approved institutes by Director General of Civil Aviation. So there are many institutes who offer an AME. The prospects of an AME engineer are very significant. It's a good license to have if you're type rated on a narrow body. So I think there are a lot of prospects. If she's referring to Amy, there's a 2-year course. You need to pass a test.
Okay.
Once you pass it, I must tell her that within the mix, change the tax structure, and hopefully some other changes in terms of royalties are given. You may see a lot of activity in the maintenance and repair and overall, both on airframe, avionics, and engineering, even components. So what she needs to do is to pass the test, then decide whether the prospects there.
Okay. Thank you, Kapilji. Mishbasan, I think we don't. There are no more questions, so I would request.
I would in fact like to ask one question to Dr. Mattoo before we close the session. Dr. Mattoo, you did mention that a person maybe he has qualified to do something, but eventually he gets into something else. Even Kapil said that he has actually started from hospitality sector and then became an aviation expert. There are so many people who change their career path and then succeed very well, but whether they did medicine, they went into some other field, they became entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs become professors, whatever. What do you think is the main what you call element which ultimately makes them succeed in that particular field? Is it luck? Is it the is it the quality of somebody's initiative or hard work? What do you think makes a person?
In the back of everything, luck is there. And
Really? What percentage?
Significant percentage. And because I see my life at different times, I wonder how did this happen? I graduated number one school and whatever, those things were there. But the luck is there. And then there how much you want to break the status quo. We have problem, Kashmiris. We were. My uncle finished his engineering, and I grew up in Delhi, but he was not much older than me, only 4 or 5 years. He went to work for PWD, the Public Works Department.
Public Works Department, yes.
So my grandfather, this is my mother's brother and my mother's father, was walking, and he had not talked to him when he was working. He saw him standing on the road somewhere. He told him, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Look here, I'm working this job I took last week." He said, "I sent you to engineering school to stand here on the road and take these people and this thing." He made him leave the job that minute. He took him home. He said, "I'll support you. You're not going to do that job." And he became dean of the engineering school, Polytechnic school in Jammu. But what I'm saying, these kind of restrictions, and we used to, but we have to break that tradition a little bit. Because if our parents, grandparents, do everything, we do respect them, they would have been kings of the world. Obviously, we all have limitations. And how we see the world is basically through the lens of what our experiences are, what parents told us. And it can be very different but the times have changed. There was fear that time. If you lose a job, you couldn't go out from Kashmir, look for another job somewhere else. That in my grandfather's time or great grandfather's time. So at this time, the world is open. And one is that. And second thing is, you have to be answerable to a lot of things that you are committed to from birth, your parents, your family, or other things. So that plays a role in it also. Then it is the individual personality, clarity of thinking, weighing the consequences, pros and cons. What if you do this thing? What are the benefits and what are the losses? It should not be purely in commercial terms. It has to do with emotions, your history, your upbringing. All those things play a part in making a decision. in all of our lives. I had opportunity to, I would have been a billionaire by now, you know, but I didn't want to do those things. It was when I came here, within about a year's time, friends of mine asked me, there's some restaurant or hotel, they will come join us, investors. I'm thinking my grandfather will say, I'm cool, chai dukan. Hai." So, you know, those limitations were there. They did very well. They laugh at me sometimes, why you don't? But at the same time, I want our Brahminical values to be tweeted a little bit, that we should go into entrepreneurial things. We have hundreds of CEOs in India who are Kashmiri, but not the owners. There was someone on the job, they don't want to go on their own. They should. And they are doing it now. I see a lot of people doing it. And people who venture out. So let's see, Kapil, we just talk about from where I see him on YouTube and other things. He's doing a wonderful job. We are proud of people like him who are doing these things. We have plenty of doctors, engineers. They have to go into diversified fields and establish themselves. Liberation was already achieved by Kashmiris who left Kashmir. If you see old Kashmiris from Delhi, you know, Pandits, Aksars, and even from, they became a different breed of Kashmiris who experimented with everything. Like ITC that Kapil said, you worked with ITC in the beginning. It was Kashmiri group that took over right after independence, realized that look at this, what do you call, hotel industry is going to be a next big thing in India. So they got involved with it and they were running it till Mr. Chuk came and made a little mess of it, but Saprus, the Atals and these folks.
Yes.
Outside Kashmir, who were in Rajasthan, they excelled in it. And so that it has to do with how you grew up, but also it has to, there are some people who are simply different. There's a lot of many things, but I want our younger generation to think out of box. I know there is comfort in something that you're used to, right? But try, you never know, because the world is so big, we don't know. There are trillions of books being produced in the last 100 years. We haven't read them. There are so many wise people allowed, we haven't heard them. To realize that this is the ultimate truth, I'm going to do only this thing, limits you. Keep your eyes open, learn, and then make decisions.
Kapil, your quick take on the same subject. Because you yourself mentioned that you were doing something else and you went into aviation by an accident. I'll unmute. You'll have to unmute. Yeah. So what do you think?
I must confess that luck is critical, frankly. In many talented guys, very. I mean, I would consider myself to be average or maybe even mediocre, but luck is critical. There is an element of determination, you know, a very structured pursuit. Don't give up if you're there. Self-belief. Those things have to be inbuilt. But luck is critical, and I was just reading some message that came on the handle that luck is for different people. My daughter actually jokes with me all the time. He says, "You're on television all the time, and there are so many more talented. And what have you done? You've done nothing." So luck is critical. I agree with you. In my case, I would say singularly luck, because you know, you go in one direction, take you somewhere else. You find mentors all the time who are there to help you. Without luck, that can't happen. I found mentors possibly in my life all the time. I still find them. I don't know where they come from. I hardly meet them. And a chance meeting, and that changes the direction. So luck is very critical. But Also, it's important that you don't give up. A very high level of strategic determination, perseverance, passion for what you do, because passion is power, empathy, relating to people. There are so many factors, but luck to me is central. So whoever has said it, it varies from different people to different people. I will completely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kapil ji and Dr. Nirmal. I'll hand it over to Renu Kant ji for the vote of thanks and concluding a very nice session. Renu ji.
Thank you very much, Vinodji. I think both the eminent speakers have actually been linked to the dreams.
Your mic is having an echo.
Just one moment. I will use another gadget of mine. One second, please.
Yeah, it's okay. No, why we can't listen to you? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Our both eminent speakers have actually given wings to the dreams of our next generations, whether it is aviation or it is medicine. So both of them have shown a very nice way, and they have given a nice brief to the opportunities, to the upbringings, whether it is being honest, whether it is Kashmiri upbringing, working hard, be respectful, or being followers of Saraswati, which Dr. Mattoo has very well said. And I really appreciate that line, that we are followers of Saraswati and not the Lakshmi, and that is what KP is meant for. So when it comes to Mr. Mattoo, despite the fact that the career and the option you are in, it is very difficult to pursue, but still, whatever lightning you have given to the new generation is fantastic, because that will really let them know the roots they are from. So you have taken them back to the roots of our culture. So thank you very much for that. And when it comes to our aviation expert, Mr. Kapil Kaul, this was definitely an eye-opening session with the aviation industry, doing lot many things, and how important the aviation, the airports are for growth of any sector in any country. What is the impact of the connectivity? What is urban mobility, and how it is going to change in next future? How much is the percentage on our GDP? What kind of a job opportunities we have. So thank you very much, Mr. Kapil Kaul, for giving this eye-opening session. And thank you all the participants who have really participated and who have shown patience for listening to us and being with us for continuation of all these 2 hours. And a big thanks to Jkvm for organizing such wonderful sessions that really gave wings to the dreams of our young generation. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night. Have a sound sleep and stay safe.
We should unmute everybody, and everybody should unmute himself, so that we do a round of claps, a round of applause for our guest speakers. Everybody should.
Thank you.
Thank
Namaskar.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sahab. Thank you, Kapil.
Namaskar.